Welcome everyone to today's webinar with Léonie. My name is Angela and we've got Eve with us.
Hello.
So we're from Onkaparinga Libraries, and I'd like to thank Alan and Unwin for allowing us to have Léonie Kelsall with us today. And I'd also like to thank Dymocks, because they have, if they haven't got the books in, they've definitely got them on order because they've already sold out. So you can purchase a copy online through Dymocks. You can also put a copy on hold at your local library. So we have got plenty of copies of the book. You can do it over the phone, in person or online. So they're all your options for getting a copy of the book. If you have any questions today, you can ask your questions for Léonie through the Q&A, which is located at the bottom of your screen. So if you hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen, you'll see it comes up. So try and use the Q&A, not the chat button if possible. So with that, I would like to welcome Léonie again. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
This is Léonie's first book. However, I thought I'd better do some research, see what this is all about. I noticed that you had written some books previously under Léonie K.
Léonie K, yes.
So that's a pen name. So what made you want to use a pen name?
The books under Léonie K are very different genres to rural romance, and they also span quite a number of genres. So it seemed just a safer way of not confusing readers by making it very clear that Léonie K is basically a different person.
What, because you've written a number of books under Léonie K, what then prompted you to write under your name?
Because I loved this book. I actually had several titles that I wanted under this name. One of the ones under Léonie K, I really should have put under this name, but it's kind of hard juggling more than one name, so I was putting it off for as long as possible. But I was very proud to claim this book, and it's because the story is based in the area that I came from. It's kind of the book of my heart. So I wanted it under my own name.
Do you think you'll write again under that pen name?
I don't have any plans to at the moment. I'm keeping the pen name alive, obviously. And quite a few of the books I wrote under that pen name were written with a co-writer who is a very talented American author. So we kind of have to wait for the planets to align to be able to write something together again. So Léonie's still there. I still like the work that she did, but at the moment I'm focusing on rural romance.
I noticed in your biography that you grew up in the Fleurieu, which is one of the reasons we wanted to chat with you today, because you're homegrown. And you've had a few different jobs in your time. Do you own your own counselling business?
Yes, I do. Yes.
So that's still an active business, even though that you're now a writer?
I did have plans to wind right back now and just write full time, but with the advent of COVID and some of my current clients' personal problems sort of blooming, I've had to keep counselling as well.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer?
I always loved writing. I have written from a very young age. I had my first book published when I was 8. To be fair, it was only on butcher's paper, but you know, it was at school. It was chosen out of the whole class, so yeah, I'm proud of it, and I don't understand why I don't have a copy of it anymore. And I was such a prolific reader. I was very lucky when we moved from the Fleurieu to the Murraylands. I met Peggy Creighton, who was the librarian at Murray Bridge, and she was just fantastic. She let me borrow unlimited books, and I was only about 9 then, and she didn't limit me to the children's section. In fact, I didn't even realise there were sections or even genres. I just used to pick up books and devour them. And I think if you're a reader, it's kind of a natural progression to want to write as well. So yeah, I've written for a long time.
How did you start the process of like finding a publisher and the steps you took to become an accomplished writer?
Okay, accomplished. Thank you. I like that. Yeah, it was an overnight story that only took 20 years. I wrote my first title more than 20 years ago, actually. So long ago that it was longhand. We are talking the days of the dinosaurs. There were no computers. Wrote it out twice longhand, and the process then was that you had to write it all out and post the entire thing to publishers who were basically in the UK. So I did that a few times, got really good feedback from it, but your avenues were very limited to get published. So I kind of did that and then put it away very sadly, had kids, had careers, did all of that, and then pulled it out of the cupboard again and discovered that literary Twitter had become a thing. I didn't even know Twitter was a thing, but along with computers came Twitter. And I discovered that there was an American market for publication, which basically revolves around you need to get a literary agent in America, which is quite hard, a very competitive process. I was fortunate, I pitched, managed to get an agent, and it's then that agent's job to pitch your work to the publishers and try and get your contracts. So I got a few contracts in America, but it was still, it's a very lengthy process. If you get a contract in America, it can be 2 years before your book even comes out. And I am very good friends with Sandy Docker, who's a well-known women's fiction author, writes beautiful things. And we'd kind of gone through this process together of trying to find agents, trying to get published. And she said, why don't you try the Australian market again? So I pitched this book to the Australian market, to Allen and Unwin. They have something called Friday Pitch, which is basically a slush pile. You throw in a sample of your work and cross your fingers and try and forget about it. And 4 days later, I had an email asking for the whole work. And within a month, I had a contract. So I was just incredibly lucky.
Wow, that's great. With your book, what's inspired the book? And how did you come up with the name of it, The Farm at Peppertree Crossing?
The name is about the third take on the name, and the original name was one of the inspirations for the book. My teenage daughter Taylor and I spend a lot of time on the family property, and we were driving out there one day, and in very typical teenage fashion, she was going, "Oh, I want liverwurst for lunch. No, I want lamingtons for lunch." And then she says, "Oh, liverwurst and lamingtons, that'd be a great name for a book." And I'm a sucker for alliteration, so I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's a great name, but it's not really how you write a book. Where would the liverwurst and lamingtons come into it?" So we brainstormed the book, and liverwurst and lamingtons are in it, as you'll discover when you read. But when I pitched it to Allen and Unwin, my publisher Annette Barlow said, "Now about the title, how married are you to it?" And I'm like, "What's wrong with the title?" And she goes, "Yeah, no, not going to fly." So that was part of the inspiration for the book. The other part was because I grew up in small towns. In fact, at Rapid Bay, where I first went to school, there are only 11 kids in the entire school. I think the population of the town is only 14 or 16 now. So like many rural towns, it's slowly dying. And I had an idea of taking a rural town and populating it with characters and bringing people in from outside to repopulate the whole area. So it sort of inspired a series set in Settlers Bridge, where Peppertree Crossing is set.
With some of the other authors we've spoken to, it's only recently come to my attention that you don't get to choose the cover of your book.
No.
I thought that was very surprising. But I did have one question with the book cover. So that's the book cover readers, for the readers. Is the girl on the front, is she what you'd expect Roni to look like? Did your image of Roni differ from the book, or did you look at it and go, "Wow, that's perfect"?
That was literally my only reservation with signing a contract, was not having control of the cover, because I don't like a lot of character descriptions when I'm reading a book. I like to form the image in my own mind, so I have to make myself actually put character descriptions in books. And I was fairly terrified of what the cover was going to look like. And when Annette sent it to me, I could have cried. I was so happy with it. It was absolutely perfect. In my original story, Ronnie's hair was a shade darker, but I hadn't formed a really true picture of what she looked like. I knew her psyche better than I knew her exterior, so I was quite happy to go with that and just make her hair a shade lighter in the story.
Excellent. So in the book, I won't give too much of it away, but Roni, she comes into an inheritance, which I'm always fascinated about. So I think that's everyone's best dream, that they get an inheritance from someone they don't know, so they don't have any of that grief, but they get some money. So that sounds really cool. Obviously, she had to go through a lot of conditions to gain that money, and she learned a lot about herself on the way. So the book is about her journey,
yes,
to be who she is. Can you explain why Roni always seems to take the hard road? Like, what, because it's very realistic in the sense that lots of humans are like that. Did you always have that plan for Roni, that she would be that sort of stubborn character, or did the character develop as you wrote the book?
She was always going to be stubborn, simply because her background has made her mistrustful. She only has trust in herself and love for her cat, and she daren't let herself expand beyond that. She knows that she could be hurt if she allowed herself hope or love, anything like that. She's opening herself to hurt, because that's what her past experience has been as a child. And she was always going to be that way in my story. In fact, in the first versions of the story was quite a bit darker than it currently is. And Annette said, yeah, no, it needs to be a little bit lighter. We don't need quite that much depth to it. So no, Ronnie's always been not a tortured soul, but she's hurting deep down, and she needs to find a way to love herself before she can love anybody else.
Will you write any more books based on the Peppertree farm? Like, will it be a trilogy or?
The next book in the companion series, I guess you'd call it, is already under contract with Allen and Unwin. So it won't be set at Peppertree Crossing, but it is set in the Settlers Bridge area, and you will see cameos from some of the characters who are in Peppertree Crossing.
Oh, that's excellent. I like having books with different storylines, but some of the same characters.
A crossover, yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. Thank you. That's all the questions I had. So I'm just going to hand over to Eve and see if she's got any questions from the audience.
Yes, I've got a couple of audience questions that have come through. So Léonie, when writing a book, do you use your experiences and characters you've met as the basis of the book, or is it all totally from your imagination and made up?
I have quite a bizarre writing technique where I will be doing something else like gardening or whatever, and I will think of a sentence, and I'll come in, scribble that down and put it up on my pin-up board, which is what I'm looking at right now. It's incredibly messy. And later I will construct a story to fit that sentence. Obviously, I've got tickets on myself and I think, wow, that's just the best sentence anybody's ever come up with. Let's write a chapter about it. So the characters are never based on people that I know, but they will be based on quirks. For example, on Sunday, I went out with some friends, which is quite rare because I can be a hermit. And I was literally sitting, tapping things into my phone about, cross your arms in a manner, in a defensive manner across your front, because one person was doing that, and keep picking up your wine glass. And I'll write down lots of little quirks or personality traits that I see and use those for characters. But I don't think I've ever based a character on a real person. And experiences, again, a lot of what happens is partial personal experience. You've experienced a minor fraction of an event and then you build it into something in a book.
So interesting how things that are happening in real life can inspire a sentence or two here.
Yeah.
Another question we've had, and you did talk a little bit about a companion book for this one before. What are you working on next? Is it going to be exclusively that, or have you got a couple of things in the pipeline?
Okay, The Wattle Seed Inn is the working title for the next book, and I've completed it. I'm waiting on edits for it. So I'm now working on a third book in the same companion series.
That's good news for everybody who enjoyed that one. We'll have to keep an eye out for book number 2. Do you have a release date yet, or?
It will be within the next 12 months.
Very exciting. Now, I don't think we have any more questions coming in, but I wondered if you might be able to read your favourite part of the book for us.
Oh, okay. Could have warned me about that, and I've had glasses ready. I don't know that I have. I just tipped everything over on top of it. But there is a section that is somewhat darker than rural romance tends to be, I'm told. As I've said before, I didn't realise rural romance was a genre. I thought I was writing women's fiction. So my writing does tend to be darker than what is considered standard rural romance. So this section, it deals with Ronnie's own emotions, her lack of trust, and some fears that she has. Luke turned the TV up, and the guys settled further back on the lounge, alongside her. So close she could feel their pulses, hear their 2 rapid heartbeats, smell their sweaty excitement. Darkness fringed her vision. The bowl slipped in her grasp. Her toes curled, cramping against the straps of her sandals. Her stomach turned to rock. If she moved, tried to stand, to escape, they would shove her face down on the lounge, bury her screams in the cushions as they turned up the TV. She knew how it went. No, there was no need for this, no reason to let the memories in. Except she could taste the blood in her mouth. She could hear the screams, her screams. Heart racing, she couldn't breathe. The hands came faster, pretending they were reaching for snacks, but reaching for her, threatening to brush her legs, her thighs. Closer, closer. Any second now, the touching would start. Her breath sobbed in her throat. Her jaw ached as the first scream clawed for escape. Chips avalanched over the edge of the bowl. Ronnie? Matt stood in front of her, holding out a drink. Though he blocked the TV screen, shut off the glaring images that triggered her brain, she couldn't speak, could only stare at him as she dragged at the air for oxygen that didn't exist. He set the glass on the coffee table with a crack that should have snapped her out of the miasma of terror. It didn't. Nothing could. She was trapped, just like she'd been all those years ago. Nothing had changed. Nothing was better. A kid again, she was unable to protect herself, unable to fight back, unable to speak out. Panic oozed in, as thick as tar, crushing her chest. She knew how to combat it, breathe and count. But the numbers wouldn't come. Nothing would come except the memories, blinding flashes of light in the dark room, scars from her past ripping apart her future.
Oh, thank you so much. I think a few people might be wondering what the memories are, so I think you might have enticed a reader or two there.
Good.
I'll throw it back over to Angela now to do our wrap up.
Excellent. I do remember that scene in the book. Had a nice outcome at the end. Good, good. I just wanted to thank you very much, Léonie, for being with us today. And once again, thank Alan and Unwin. We will have this recording on our our website, as with all our other recordings, so people can go on there and have a look at it at a later time. We've also got a Facebook page that you can follow, where we advertise all our online events that we're currently doing, and we'll send out a feedback form for some feedback for anything we can do to improve in the future. So once again, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and look forward to next time. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Bye.